Start.
Okay. To acquire knowledge, one must study, but to acquire wisdom, one must observe. A very good evening to the esteemed guests and faculties present here. The Department of Accounting and Finance at SRM Institute of Science and Technology, Ramapuram, is pleased to present a comprehensive national level 3-week research methodology course. This course is meticulously designed to provide participants with essential knowledge and skills in research techniques, empowering them to conduct high quality academic and industry oriented research. The program targets academicians, research scholars, professionals, and students who aspire to enhance their research capabilities in the fields of finance, accounting, and allied disciplines. Let's commence this session with Amartai Vartha. I request everyone present here to switch off their cameras and microphones. Thank you. I now request Dr. Alamelu ma'am to present the welcome address.
I welcome my colleague, Pratiksha ma'am, Dr. Chitra Srinivasan ma'am, our head of the department. In absentia, our dean sir, Dr. C. Sundar, then our VP academics, VP research. Let me read out the profile of our today's resource person. I am honored and privileged to read the today's resource person profile, Dr. T. Suja ma'am. She is assistant professor working at AM Jain College. She also holds diplomas in air ticketing, diploma in acupuncture, diploma in personal secretariat. She has the technical knowledge such as in Tally ERP, knowledge in Profit 2.0, and knowledge in Excel. She has been acted as a resource person for various FTP programs, national webinars, and guest speakers on various topics. To mention a few, she has been invited as a guest speaker at Frisk University for the topic Overview of Operations of Research. She has been invited as a guest speaker at SGNB Vaishnav College, Dhanalakshmi Srinivasan Engineering College, Dr. NGP Arts and Science College, Coimbatore, Dr. MGR University, and again the SGNB Vaishnav College for marketing practices and case study analysis. She holds the responsibility as admission coordinator, university exam committee member, entrepreneurial development cell coordinator, cultural event vice president. And she has also acted as a Rotaract coordinator, member of discipline committee, judge for cultural and sports events, overall discipline coordinator, department alumni coordinator, value added course trainer for the course interview skills, and member of admission core committee of department counseling process. She has presented various publications and papers and in FDPs and in various online courses. She has published 3 UGC CARE and 7 international journal papers, and she has also presented papers in various national seminars and conferences. Then she has participated in 5 international conferences and 4 national seminars and conferences, attended 8 FPPs and 7 workshops University SDND Vaishnav College, and she has been an external examiner for the project Viva OS and question paper setter for the BCom streams. And she has published the book on the topic Banking Theory, Law and Practice, Business Communication and Marketing. Her achievement is has achieved 100% results in business law in the university examination conducted on December 2020. Thank you once again, ma'am, for accepting our invite. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank the management of SRM Institute of Science and Technology, Ramapuram campus, and the organizers of Department of Accounting and Finance for giving me an opportunity to be a part of this national level 3 weeks research methodology course. Thank you once again. Now I'll move on to the session. Okay, so we'll start with the first slide. That is main purpose of research. We all very well know that research means searching again and again. What for we are going to search? We either search to expand our knowledge. What do we mean by expanding your knowledge? To gain an insight or a deeper understanding of a particular area or a field. Or we'll search again and again to solve a problem. Solve to find a solution for the existing problem. And again, then the third purpose we can say to drive innovation, to develop new ideas, products, processes, and technologies. And another main purpose of research is to predict outcome based on the behavior and trends in specific areas. Now we'll see the difference between the research and research methodology. Ma'am, are the slides visible, ma'am? Is the slides visible, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Ma'am, shall I
ma'am.
continue?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Okay, now we'll see the difference between research and research methodology. We often used to interchangeably use these two terms, though they are interconnected with each other, but there is some distinction. There are some distinction between these two terms. So I'll just give you the gist of the difference. That is, research is a broader term, whereas research methodology is slightly narrower. A research as real content, actual content, and the purpose of the whole research project. Whereas research methodology includes only the research design, sampling methods, data collection, and analytical tools. So that's the main difference between research and research methodology. Next, we'll see the steps in research. We'll just glance through the first two steps in research. And the topic of this session is the third, that is framing of research questions, formulating the research objectives, and development of hypothesis. And these three are the topics for this session. So first we'll glance through the first two steps, then I'll move on to my topics. Then finally I'll give an overview of all the steps with the concluding slide. So we'll start with the first one. First step, identification of research problem. So research problem, how do we identify? So first of all, we need to choose the area of study. We'll take, for instance, we'll take commerce. So there are so many areas. Finance, we have HR, marketing. So many areas are there. So in that, we need to find out the broader area. In which area are we going to do the research? Is it in HR? In HR, if you are going to do research in HR, which topic? There are so many topics under HR: stress, training, motivation, performance appraisal. So many topics are there. So what are you going to do? So that from the broader area, you have to just narrow down to the specific topic. Again, you have to narrow down to what you are going to do in that performance appraisal. If you're going to take that performance appraisal area, what are we going to do? What are we going to study? So we have a lot of questions coming up. So are we going to study the impact of this performance appraisal on the satisfaction of employees? What are we going to do? So we will have a lot of questions coming up in our mind. Okay. So a small tip I would say for the budding researchers, we can identify the research problem using two shortcuts. One is research gaps. When you go through many theses, you are using Shodh Ganga or Google Scholar for articles, you can come across many research gaps. When you go through the thesis, at the end of the slide, they would have given scope for future research or recommendation for future research. So from that itself, you can pick out the problem, research problem, and do the research. That's the easiest way I can say. So in every thesis, at the end of the last chapter will be the conclusion and the recommendation for the future research. So we can pick out where the research has ended, we can start doing a research on that topics which has not been explored. So this is a shortcut we can say to identify a research problem. Okay, next we'll move on to the review of literature. I hope you would have gained insight into this review of literature, because till yesterday literature review was dealt in depth by many resource persons. So it is a very, very important step in research to find out what has been explored and what has not been explored. That creates the research gap. Okay, so we have glanced through the first two steps. Now I'll move on to my topics for this session. Okay, the first one is research questions. What are research questions? It's a very important. I told you, in the beginning, I would have told you, if you're going to choose a broader area like HR, then performance appraisal. If it's going to be performance appraisal, which area is it going to be? An IT or an education institution? Where among which employees performance appraisal are we going to study? We've got a lot of questions to do. Only when questions arise, we'll be able to search for the answers for those questions. So research question is a very, very important step in designing any study. So it must be specific, it must be very clear. So I'll just give you an example. So if the research question focuses on the specific relationship between sleep and academic outcomes, how should we form a research question? How does the amount of sleep affect the academic performance of high school students? The students may be in the higher education end also. So what question are we asking here? What is the amount of sleep? Like, what is it, a 7 hours sleep, a 5 hours sleep? What is that amount of sleep which affects the academic performance? When you try to answer this question, you will get some more. You will be able to break down this question into 3 actionable targets, like still more, you'll get a clarity over the topic. Next, we'll see how research questions can be framed. There are few formats I've just given. If you are going to do a descriptive research, the question should be like, what are the current patterns of rainfall in Thailand, rice producing regions? If you're going to make a comparative study between one variable and the other, or one area and the other, then it should be in a comparative basis, like how does rice yield in regions with increased rainfall differ from those with decreased rainfall in that. So you're making a comparative study here. When there is a comparative study, the research question should be in this format. And next comes the causal research question. What is cause and effect? So what is the impact of smoking on the health? Like, what is the cause and what is it? What is the impact? Cause and effect. If we are going to, if a study is going to be related with the cause and effect, then in that case the question should be like, what will be the impact? You should make use of the word impact, influence, what influences, so like that. And if your study is going to be exploratory in nature, in that case your question should be something more exploring. Then finally you have the evaluate. If you're going to study about evaluating a particular practice or something like that, or a particular area, in that case you should evaluate. Your question should be in such a way that it is specific, but at the same time it should be uh, it should uh, it should be what to say, it should cover the whole thing in a concise way. In a concise way, it should be complete. It should be complete in all the aspect. Though it should be simple, clear, and it should cover the whole study in a simple way. Next, I've just got a general formula for framing research questions. So first one is, what is the relationship between variable 1 and variable 2? Mostly we'll be dealing with two variables, right? Independent variable and dependent variable. So the research questions can be like, what is the relationship between variable 1 and variable 2 in population? What is the population? The total population available during the time period. If you have a time stipulated for that in 3 months or 5 months, like that time period. Then the next formula I've given is, how does an independent variable affect the dependent variable in the population? So it's like that. Then the last one is, what are the effects of phenomenon or intervention on the outcome in population? What are the effects of that? Effect of something, one variable, on the outcome, on the result in population. So these are the general formulas that was available for framing research questions. Next step is research objectives. So what is it? As such, objectives means goals. So what are research objectives? They are specific goals of research which we seek to achieve. We really want to achieve the research objectives. Okay. So how should the research objectives be? It should be specific, not ambiguous, measurable, and most important, it should be aligned with the research questions that we have framed in the previous step. And it should be realistic. And it should not be very abstract like. So research, the nature of research objective should be in this way. Next, I've just going to explain two examples of a well-framed research objectives. So we'll take first example. To measure the average amount of sleep among high school students get per night. So there is a research question. How do we break this research questions into objectives? So we can just have these research objectives for the above research question to analyze the relationship between sleep duration and student test scores or grades. We are going to analyze the relationship between two variables. One is sleep duration and student test scores. Then the second objective, to determine whether sleep deprivation leads to lower academic performance. Then the last one, we are going to compare this academic performance of students who get adequate sleep and who don't have adequate sleep, less than 7 hours. So this is the first example. And then I'll move on to the second example to throw more light on this research objective. This research question is, how do changes in rainfall affect rice production in India? So this research question can be again, we need to break this question into attainable goals, research goals or objective, we can say. So we can just analyze the trends in annual rainfall in India, rice producing regions over the last 20 years, or we can assess the correlation. So we can assess the correlation means the relationship between two variables. One is rainfall patterns and the yield of rice. Yield of rice. Then next comes the evaluate. How to evaluate the adaptation of the farmers to the changes in the rainfall. Next, the third topic for this session is hypothesis, which is very, very important. What is an hypothesis? To put it in a simple way, it is just a testable statement, just a statement containing one positive statement and one negative statement. That's it. To make it to make it more understandable, it's just a statement. But how should the statement be? It should be specific, testable. Testable means it should be put to test, like it should be tested with the statistical tools. And hypothesis usually aim at explaining the relationship between two or more variables, which needs to be tested using statistical tools. As I've already said, there are two types of hypothesis. One is null hypothesis, which always says no difference, no impact, always no in null hypothesis. Whereas alternative hypothesis is always very positive. Like there is a positive in the sense it's just opposite of null. There is an effect, there is a significant relationship, there is an impact. So it goes like that. Alternative, there's an effect or relationship between variables. Next, I'll just give you an example for hypothesis. We'll take the same example what we discussed for research question. How does the amount of sleep a student gets affect the academic performance? So we are going to see that. See, the topic is effect of sleep on academic performance. This is a statement. It is a topic we want to explore. So research question is, does the amount, we just want to find out whether the amount of sleep really affects the academic performance. We just want to know. So this is a research question that has come to our mind. So we need to find the answers for that. How do you find the answers for this research question? By testing the hypothesis. As I already told you, null hypothesis always says does not have any significant effect on a student's academic performance. And of course, on the contrary, alternative hypothesis says there is a significant effect on students' academic performance. And sleep has a significant effect on students' academic performance. So this is how we need to frame the null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis to the research questions. Next, we'll move on to the types of hypothesis. There are many types of hypothesis apart from null and alternative. There's a simple hypothesis. What is simple hypothesis? We are going to predict the relationship between one independent variable and one dependent variable. Only one in each. Whereas complex hypothesis means it predicts the relationship between two or more independent variable and two or more dependent variable. When variables are more on either side. Two or more independent as well as two or more dependent variables. Then we have the directional hypothesis. It specifies some condition. So we'll take like directional hypothesis specifies this expected direction. So we'll look into the example, you will understand. Students who study for more than 3 hours daily will score higher on exams. So we just give a direction, like we have stipulated some condition like 3 hours. So when there is no condition, we can say it is non-directional hypothesis. Simply saying there is a relationship between the amount of time spent studying and exam scores. So if you don't stipulate any condition, it becomes a non-directional hypothesis. And next we have associative hypothesis. What does it mean? We're going to find out the relationship between two variables, whether there is a positive correlation or a negative correlation. Okay. Then comes the causal hypothesis. This is about the cause and effect. Studying about one variable being the cause of it and what is the effect of that. we'll take the example, we'll discuss this example. Smoking causes an increase in the risk of developing lung cancer. So what is a independent variable? Like smoking, is it independent? What is an, that is a reason, that is a cause. And what is the effect of smoking on the health? It develops lung cancer. It increases the risk of developing lung cancer. The last comes the statistical hypothesis. Statistical hypothesis is, we are going to use statistical method to either accept this null hypothesis or reject the null hypothesis. Okay, using this statistical tool. For example, the mean test score, that is after testing. Test score of students taught using method A is equal to the mean test scores of students taught using this method. So we are comparing. We are able to compare using the test scores. Next, we'll see the purpose of hypothesis testing. What is hypothesis testing? We have we have formulated the hypothesis. What for we have formulated the hypothesis? We need to test the hypothesis. So how do we test? So that is, we are going to test the hypothesis using the statistical tools. Okay. But what is the purpose? Why should we test the hypothesis? The purposes are, we can say, it provides sufficient evidence to support the claim about the population. Then it helps to validate research claims. Then it helps more, above all, it helps to control errors while deriving conclusions. It helps to control errors. Then finally, hypothesis testing helps to generalize findings. How do we generalize? We are just generalizing by taking that sample data representing the whole population and testing that, putting them into a statistical analysis. We are able to testing. Next, we have the components of hypothesis testing. What are the components? One, we know null hypothesis. Next, we have alternative hypothesis. Then we are going to talk about significance level, alpha level. What is that significance level? 0.05. That means 95%. It is free from error, we can say. Okay. Then we have the p-value, probability value of obtaining a result from two extremes. One less than that or more than the scores. If the p-value is less than the significance level, we reject the null hypothesis. Next, we have the next component, we have the test statistic. So it is calculated using the statistical tool applied on the sample data. So finally, what do we do? What do we do with this p-value and significance level? What is the final outcome? We are either we'll be rejecting the hypothesis or we'll be accepting the null hypothesis. The main point to be remembered is, if the p-value is less than the significance level, the null hypothesis is rejected. Next, we'll see the types of errors in hypothesis testing. There are two types of errors. One is type 1 error, the other one is type 2 error. So we'll take one example. Then based on that example, we'll try to discuss the type 1 error and type 2 error. So example we have taken as medical test for a rare disease. So what will be our null hypothesis? As such, always negative, not always, like does not have significance, does not have impact, like that. So the patient does not have a disease. This is the null hypothesis. Alternative hypothesis, the patient has the disease. This is the alternative, just opposite of that. Reality, when tested, the actual reality was negative test result. So that is, the test has become negative. So no, the patient does not have that rare disease. That is a reality. But now we'll start discussing. So there are two chances of getting the errors. That is type 1 error, false positive or alpha error. What does it mean? Where it has to be rejected, like where it has to be rejected, it has been accepted. That is, rejecting a true null hypothesis. Where it has to be accepted, it has been rejected. And the type 2 error is just opposite of that. Accepting, that is accepting or incorrectly retaining when it is actually false. So these two errors, there are chances for these two errors to occur during the hypothesis testing. Then comes the research. One second. So actually, so all the three topics I have discussed. Now I'll move on to the research design. It is just a research design is a blueprint, we can say, overall framework, we can say, which guides the researcher in collecting, measuring, analyzing data for the research project. And the very good research design, when it is well framed, it minimizes the bias, reliability is maximized, and validity is increased. Now, all these three help us to generalize the findings. That's the research design. Next, what for we need the research design? Research design helps to answer the various questions. What questions? Research questions that we have framed in the beginning. And it acts as a guidepost. So it acts as a blueprint. So based on that blueprint only, we are just conducting our research. And it helps to do the research in an economical way, and subsequently it helps to avoid future failure of that research. Next, we'll see the formulation of research design. So what are the components of research design? We'll see. Research object, I already told you, it provides the blueprint for the research, like research objectives, questions, data collection methods, sampling, then data collection units, then data analysis, time frame, resources, and data presentation and reporting. So all these constitute research design formulation. So all these must be present in a research, well-framed research design. Everything, it will give in detail, like what sort of data has to be collected, what are the ways of collecting the data. We can use primary data, we can use secondary data that is available. Then regarding the sampling, we have got many types of sampling, like quota sampling, random sampling, non-random sampling, so much snowball sampling. So we've got certified sampling, we've got many methods. So which sampling method are we going to adopt in the study? So that will be specified in this research design. Then following that, data collection. How are we going to collect the data? Is it through the questionnaires or through interview methods, or is it through the observation? There are so many tools for data collection. How are we going to do? Then we have collected the data. What are we going to do with the data collected? We need to analyze the data. We need to put it into the statistical tests. So we need to apply the appropriate statistical tools to arrive at the interpretation of the data collected. Then we have the time frame. Research design must definitely have this time frame, within which period this study need to be conducted. Then the resources, time, money, how much is required in terms of money to complete this study. In the last comes the data presentation and the reporting. We can say like thesis, that is thesis preparation or dissertation preparation or a PG project, or all these are data presentation. Documentation, finally documentation. Next we have the data collection method. Data collection method, we have got primary and secondary. Primary data collection methods, we have survey or questionnaires, then interviews and observation here. In the secondary side, we have literature review, government database. So everything is already published. We need not search for it. It's very much available. If If you go to the particular website, we can very well access the data. Okay. Then we have web scraping. There's one concept, web scraping. What is web scraping? We can collect the data using web scraping. That is, we use bots to automatically extract the content of the website. We use bots. So bots help us to extract the information automatically from the website. It's called as web scraping. So this comes under the secondary data collection method. Then comes the data analysis part. Data analysis processes, we have identified the problem, then we have collected the data. Data cleaning. What is data cleaning? Data cleaning is, while collecting the data, there may be incomplete data, there may be duplication of data. So we need to remove such incomplete responses from the data collection. Only then it can be put forth for the data analysis. Then after analyzing the data, we need to interpret the data. What is the result of data analysis given? What has it revealed? So that is data. So being a layman, anyone who is going through a research or going through a thesis or dissertation must understand what analysis we have done. So anyone going through our thesis must understand. So for that purpose only we have the data interpretation. For every statistical tool, we interpret the data, like what is it trying to say. We end up saying like this regression analysis test, it reveals that there is an impact of smoking on the risk of developing lung cancer. Example I'm telling you. Like that. It has to interpret each and every data that has been analyzed using this statistical tool. So it is a circular process, I would say, step-by-step guideline. Okay. Next. Now I think I've already done, I'm just doing it, I think. The first two, I just glanced through in the beginning. Framing of research questions, formulating the research objectives, development of hypothesis, we have discussed. Then after that, I have discussed framing the research design, data collection, analysis of data, and interpretation of data. Just now I explained to you. And then finding of this study. So what is finding of the study? So I have analyzed the data, I have interpreted the results, I have to put them in points, right? What are the findings? But one thing we should always bear it in mind, that these findings, everything must align with the research objectives. We should never deviate from the research objectives. Ultimately, the findings of this study must match with the research objectives. Only then a research is successful. The last step is the conclusion. Conclusion is, what have we concluded after doing this research? After completing the study, what have we concluded? A concluding statement we can give. And recommendations. What is recommendation? Recommendation is for the future research. Or we can also say scope for future research. This is for the budding researchers. I already told you, we can use this recommendation or scope for future research for identifying a research problem. So it's of immense importance. From there, we can easily identify the problems and research gaps also. I would like to reiterate the research gap and the scope for future research are important tools, important steps we can say in identifying the research problem. That's a small tip for the budding researchers. Next, this I'm going to discuss iterative research process. This is not a linear process. Research process is never a linear process. That is, after this step, only this step. It's not like it. It is there, but it does not follow the same pattern. Depending on the complexity of the study, depending on the nature of study, this process may be repetitive. It may be repetitive. First, looking into this diagram itself, I can say we have formed the research question, then, of course, the research objectives leading to research design. Then, after that, what do? We collect the data. Then, we do the analysis. When we feel that this data collected does not help in accomplishing our research objectives, we feel that data should be more. It should be collection data. It's insufficient to get into to find out. I mean, that is data is insufficient to come to a conclusion. So what do? We increase the data to be collected. Again, we just go to the data collection. We collect some more. For example, if it is 500, we need 100 or 200 more. We just go for another 200 data to be collected. We just proceed with the data collection. Again, we put them into analysis. All these are done just to accomplish these research objectives. So depending on the nature of study and complexity, this becomes an iterative research process. So finally so after following this iterative research process, finally comes the reporting. Reporting, or we can say a thesis, or preparing the thesis, or dissertation, or documentation, any word thing you can say, any term you can use. And of course, the pages differ. For a dissertation, it should be something around 70 to 100, like, and for thesis, it must be 150 to 200. The pages differ. And of course, we'll be giving a detailed report starting from the identification of problem, literature review, everything will be reported. Everything will be present in the report, research report. Then comes the conclusion. So we cannot say research is the end of it. No, research can never be an end. It is always a continuous process. Why is it a continuous process? Because since it has a repetitive process in it, you cannot end up abruptly. So unless these research objectives are satisfied, till the research objectives are fulfilled, the process continues again and again. So it is continuous. So the ultimate aim of research finally is to find the answers for the research questions. So this is a concluding statement I could say for this session. Thanks for the patience listening.
Yes, ma'am, that was a wonderful presentation.
Okay, ma'am. Were the slides visible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Audio
ma'am.
was clear, ma'am. Audio was clear.
Yes. Everything is clear.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much. This is the real feedback I wanted to get.
Okay. Any questions? Participants can post if you have any questions. Pratiksha, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Your prowess and insights are truly illuminating. Gratitude can transform common days into thanksgiving, turn routine jobs into joy, and change ordinary
Pratiksha, ma'am.
opportunities into blessings. I request Pratiksha ma'am to propose a vote of thanks.
Good evening to one and all present here. As we mark to the end of today's session, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Suja Ma'am, Assistant Professor, Department of Commerce, AMJ College. Your presence in this enlightening occasion and your perception was truly valuable. I extend my cordial gratitude to our program coordinator, Dr. V. Deepa Ma'am, for instigating this conclave. I thank our HOD, Dr. Chitra Srinivasan Ma'am, and VP Admin and Academic Sir, and our Dean Sir for their support in organizing this interesting 3 weeks research methodology course. And finally, I thank all research scholar and faculty for their involvement This session is a grand success. Once again, I thank you all for your presence and your dedication today. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. That was a very wonderful session. Got
Thank you,
clarity on
ma'am.
how to define hypothesis, how to structure the hypothesis, everything. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you once again.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you.
We are at the end of this session. The Department of Accounting and Finance at SRM Ramapuram once again reaffirms its commitment to nurturing a robust research culture that aligns with global standards. I thank everyone who has participated for their time and dedication in attending this conference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.